Wonderful. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn session. We welcome all of you for different parts of the world, so from the United States to Tokyo and back. Welcome everyone. We're really looking forward to today's session with Wojciech Pluta. So I'll say more about Wojciech. Wojciech started his IT career as a DBA admin in the Devs Recovery Center. Then he jumped on the cloud hype and ran a few programs based around CRM and customer lifecycle management, resulting in spending a few years in a technical sales role for the customer experience application. Avid gamer and 3D enthusiast, which he's here for today, which resulted in creating an internal 3D community, something he has been driving for 3+ years. So welcome, Wojciech, for today's Lunch and Learn role of data in immersive experiences. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the intro. So yes, I can see some friendly faces like Brian. Great to see you. Haven't chatted for a while, but awesome to see you around here. And then yeah, let's take it away. So as per intro, I guess just to kind of add a little bit of insight into this. So about me, I'm first and foremost a family man, but yeah, second definitely a geek and with avid interest in all things 3D. As mentioned before, we kind of kickstarted this gig at Oracle a couple of years ago called XR Lab, and then ever since we've been trying to push the envelope and push it to the new heights. So awesome to be here and to talk about what I think is the role of the data in the immersive experiences. So I try to keep it quite light touch in terms of some of the insights, but yeah, happy to obviously have a discussion, dig deeper wherever you see it interesting, and first and foremost, hopefully you're gonna get something out of today that's quite useful for you. So let's take it away. So yeah, I guess the first and foremost, right, as a human being, first conscious thing is that we do as a human, we obviously play and play with toys, right? And I guess as we sort of get a bit older, our sort of play times gradually become a little bit more sophisticated, right? But I guess first and foremost we kind of learn and how to interact and play. And yes, we do have some accidents every now and then, ups and downs, but one constant remain, and that is kind of doing to understand and learn, right? And this is I guess the core principle of some of the things that we've been exploring. At this point, I'd like to assure you that no children were harmed while making this video, all safe and sound. Just thought it was a bit funny to bring that, but yeah, we do believe that future user experiences will emphasize the doing with the simulated or virtual experiences of tomorrow, right? And I guess one of the statements that we kind of live by and are close to is that especially within the immersive space, it's very relevant, because we do think that, and there's numerous of insights and studies that can actually prove this, that people, when they hear, they usually tend to forget. When they see, they remember, learn, and that's, I guess, what we do at school. But when you actually do, you understand, right? And I think the doing in the virtual spaces equals a lot of data, right? So I guess that kind of is the principle of some of the things that we've been doing in the past. So sort of diving in straight into some of the concepts of I would like to touch upon. So whether it is gaming or simulation or digital twin or complex data visualization, the role of data can be a differentiating factor of the experience itself, right? The immersive nature of virtual experiences is enhanced by the actual data and event feedback. rather than purely simulated or randomized content, right? So within the space of the enterprise, I guess you could think of it, and a digital twin, the role of data is actually relatively straightforward and a very common use case across, right? So in this scenario, different sensors, streaming the data from the real world, trying to sort of statically capture the current state of the surroundings, or the various data points around the sensor itself. And all of that could be processed, and we store it and master it in some sort of contextual data master for the digital twins in this case. And through the categorization, we can ultimately integrate it for the users to consume it in the channel of choice, right? So it could be either through some web-based experiences and using technologies like pixel streaming, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, or it could be within some sort of native, iOS applications, as you can see there. So that kind of is one side of the spectrum, right? And the other side is the kind of the outside of the enterprise data and the IoT data. There's the data that actually comes from the experiences itself, right? So it's something that you can leverage to provide insight in much the same way as the kind of enterprise, but I guess the overall goal is actually to make that a little bit more my clip doesn't work. Okay, there you go. To make it a little bit more relevant for the users, right? So in this example, I kind of summarized the customer experience as the old things, filters, e-shops, and awareness. There is the element of the onboarding, which is slightly different from the journey and training as well. But overall, what we're doing is, we're applying, we're using to apply the analytics to actually into the experiences where we extract the data from, and essentially what we're trying to do is understand the user behavior and ultimately the interaction, so that we can actually tailor it further, create the relevant sort of recommendations and so on, right? And measuring of that engagement, coupled with the demographic insights, can really give the consumers and people that interact with that data, a unique experience. And at Oracle, we tend to use our sort of SaaS application, for example, called CX Infinity, where you can actually quite easily embed tags into the various experiences. And those experiences, in terms of the way of how we actually build them, sorry, I'm just sort of clicking, it's not working, can vary too, right? So together within the team and with Brian as well, we were able to create various sort of ways of immersive experiences. So some of them could be the web pages that are sort of using static images that are 360, but still creating immersive experience, very relevant for shops and so on, where it allows you to actually almost create an e-shop experience, and then whole bunch of data is being gathered as part of that. And then there is the other side, which is the slightly sort of different to the previous one, which is around the sort of the low poly experience but fully 3D, where the virtual tour is a bit more static. This we're talking about the actually 3D experiences that are headset agnostic. We did find in the past that friction with regards to putting the headset can be sometimes a little bit of too big for some users, but anyway, still interacting with this space allows you to actually create the different type of data set for you to analyze. And I guess the third layer of it is actually the very sort of high polished version, which could be using things like Unreal Engine in the cloud, coupled with some GPU infrastructure that actually allows you to create this sort of very sophisticated and high-end experience. But the data that is traveling to and from, it is still kind of remain in the same way. So just very quickly around, what is the pixel streaming itself? So to those of you that don't know Unreal, it's a company that is owned by Epic Games. It's widely adopted game engine, even though the game engine is, I guess, can be kind of sometimes misleading, but it is used for creation of not only games. So you can create the digital twin type of experiences, as well as some of the games, trainings, and so on, right? And within the Unreal Engine, what you get is this plugin called Pixel Streaming, which is essentially allowing you to create almost like a video streaming type of service, with the difference that it's fully interactive, right? So it's different to kind of what you get from the Netflix and the likes of that, because the stream is playing back the rendered frames and audio that is sitting within the Unreal, but users can actually interact with it. So let's have a look how that actually looks. So I have this is again running off cloud. I pre-recorded it, but essentially we are using and running Unreal Engine here. So my interaction and the data that I'm creating through my interaction at the moment is limited to the scene. This is just leveraging the kind of hello world from Unreal itself, but you can see there's full interactivity that I'm capturing, moving the camera and moving it for the different angles. Actually, in the e-commerce space, when it comes to automotive, it's very relevant, because the camera angles and kind of interactions that you have with the experience can actually provide insight for the people that want to sell stuff and so on. But yeah, this is fully browser based. As you can see, the quality is pretty impressive. But yeah, the channel of the data exchange is actually twofold. So you can actually control the scene itself, but then you can also sort of overlay it with additional sort of web interaction layer, where it can allows you to create various use cases with regards to configuring and creating your own unique product or service, right? So obviously all of the clicks, all of the angles I'm looking at, this is essentially the metadata that's being created at the back end. So if I am, as a marketeer or as a customer experience executive, or a person that tries to improve the training, all sorts of different data points being generated through that interaction itself. Happy to talk a little bit about that itself and how to deliver that use case later. But yeah, fully running on the Oracle Cloud in this instance with some GPU infrastructure. So the final kind of category that I put together for today, so it's this whole concept of the performance driven data. So you could argue that it is probably a bit of mix between the two, the digital twin and the behavioral data, because there's some elements of it, but I believe that there's fundamental difference, because the granularity level within the performance driven data from the immersive experiences, it is very unique. And what I mean about that is essentially we're talking about here of continuous improvement, whether it's sports or esports, and where we actually creating a very high volume of data that can be then used, analyzed to actually get yourself better at doing something. So while training kind of teaches you how to do stuff, this is all about how do I actually apply some learnings and use the data, use some machine learning, use some AI type of services that can actually tell me what's the most optimal path, how I should be doing things, and what is it sort of all about. So the key components of this, and you could kind of argue that this is sort of getting into the creation of the data lakes and so on, but the difference here to what we have versus the other two use cases, which was the digital twin and the behavioral data, is that we have this kind of spatial event generators creating our X, Y, and Z, and these could be coming from the sports or games. And through that streaming of that high volume of data, we can actually put it somewhere, either structure it or keep it unstructured, and then apply various analytics, data science techniques to actually determine what that data is telling us. Because data on its own is just a bunch of numbers, but with the story is something different. So we did a fair bit of work within that space. So there's a couple of demos that I wanted to share. So this is one of the example of how we actually were able to connect the game data into one of our UI, and essentially that allows you to in real time create almost like a second screen experience to your games. It is feeding the data directly through the something we call RabbitMQ, and then essentially allowing you to actually have this level of visualization. So we've done that actually a couple of months ago for one of our events, and essentially you can see it a bit more in action here, where I'm playing the F1 game, and over here you can actually see the my dashboard essentially responding to the data volume that's being sent through the game. So it's quite a nice little loop. You can actually access this and play it with yourself from the front end perspective if you want to. There is a couple of Git repos that we put together that helps you with this. There is a whole demonstration about how we kind of went around it and how you can build it. But within that kind of performance data, we have that way of really going to town in terms of visualization. So another way that we did is we actually created augmented reality experience that allows you to actually visualize how you did perform on a track. So while we store that, you can actually start building various models to actually predict what should be my optimal path, where I'm braking too fast or too late, or all sorts of different nuggets of information and insight that are just waiting there to be uncovered. So so very high volume of data, and that's being streamed. There's quite a bit of the interesting content out there with regards to how we actually done around that, and there's also other areas of that we're exploring. And one of my colleagues, Ignacio, actually done this very cool series of blogs that where you can actually extract a lot of the data from the League of Legends game, and again stream it and use it within the Oracle infrastructure to actually predict who's most likely going to win based on the event. So again, really high volumes of data and streaming and adding context to it. So yeah, I guess this is kind of how I think you should think about the various areas of how the data is being created. So from the left, the digital twin, so it's what is going on right now within my estate and enterprise data, behavioral, what people are interested in, and performance in terms of how do I actually do stuff, which is within the immersive experience is quite unique, because it can drive really that continuous improvement. And as I mentioned earlier, right, data on its own is not telling you much, right? But when you actually sort it, aggregate it, and present visually, and then start explaining through the story, it all comes to its own, right? So Oracle is a data company, and we are not sort of shy of making that statement. So we constantly look of how we can actually deliver insights from the new channels or at a different sort of complexity level, ultimately delivering very key insights to the people. So that's sort of the first part. So the last bit what I would like to do is just to make you aware about some of the things that Oracle is doing within the 3D space. So I guess we like to put ourselves within the context of what is going on in the market. So we don't think that we are interested in going into the sort of polished 3D content and building immersive content, or owning Unreal or Unity. We don't want to create hardware in terms of phones or headsets. But as Oracle, what we believe the value that we bring into immersive technology is through the SaaS applications, and obviously the data of processing and the whole infrastructure that goes along with that. Hence, within the XR lab at Oracle, what we're trying to do is find a way how we can actually, learn a little bit about the technologies and immersive experiences, and this is kind of the some of the learnings that we did, but also sharing our work with you, like today, like I'm gonna do in a couple of minutes, give you some pointers into some of our Git repositories and so on. Because Oracle is actually changing, right? So there's a fair bit of stuff that's going on. We're really embracing the communities and open source. So we really want to start play more and more bigger part in terms of open source itself, and we want to sort of move into the same kind of principles of the open source as some of our competitors have, and make it easier to use Oracle within that context. So I would highly recommend you to visit our GitHub repositories. We've been pushing a lot of content within that. So we're really keen, understand, from you developers and people interested in any sort of concepts that we, showed today, how you can actually use stuff and do different things with it. And hopefully we can also support you with creating of content that can help you, get to some of your and address some of the challenges that you're facing. We've been doing quite a few bits recently, so perhaps you missed it, but we are able to get Oracle to join Blended Developer Fund. So that's kind of, again, linking to the whole supporting of the open communities. And then we've done a couple of different blogs, and one of the one recently about how you can actually build some of the metaverse type of rooms on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure using free tier accounts and so on. So it's feel free to check it out or ping me after. We also have an externally facing Slack channel. So for those of you that would like to join, I would like to emphasize that this is relatively new, so we're kind of starting to build some of the content there. But feel free to join us for some conversations, and we will be building more and more content as we sort of advance, and hopefully we can get some of your feedback in terms of some of which content works and resonates with you. But I think sorry, Hannah, but I think I slightly overrun with my deck. I think I had 20 minutes, but that's kind of it. Hopefully it was not too much of a broadcast. I am all ears in terms of any questions that you might have, and anything that anything that I would like to learn about.
Thank you so much, Wojciech, for a brilliant presentation. I think all of us enjoyed listening to you, and we could do more. So perfectly fine for going a few minutes more than planned. So we already have a question since Dixon needs to leave soon. His question is: one company in Japan is experimenting transmitting motion sense data to help user perform something they don't have experiences through digital devices. So his question is: do you think it will stop people from learning new things? And who will guard the experience so that the experience is true but not faked?
Wow, okay, that's an interesting one. So motion sense data to help users perform something they don't have experiences through digital devices. I think the way I'm reading it, and feel free to jump in, Dixon, is that essentially a company is trying to simulate the doing in a way that actually is outside of actual doing through some sort of sensors. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dixon, feel free to open your mic
Yes,
if you're still
yeah,
with us. Yes,
yeah.
yes,
It's
hello.
I met those. It's from Entity Data, I think. They said that they have this device that you can wear so that when you play piano, you can play it so that the teacher can send all those movement to the student. So then the student can play the same as the teacher. So for piano, I think it's okay. But then when you tell them, okay, so with this VR or whatever experience that you help them to cook, for example, fried rice, but who's going to tell the making is real Chinese fried rice, or it's just someone who fake it and then and try to fool the rest of the people. So in that case, it's kind of related to the virtual reality thing. So I would like to know if there's any um, community or actually regulations that prevent people from sending fake video or fake experience, because it's kind of like fake news that
Yeah.
people will try to catch up, right? So something like that. So, thanks.
Yeah, so the question of ethics, right, within this space, it's hasn't been, I think, addressed fully. I think I think we're still trying to create ethics for the fake news, because that kind of what is right and wrong in a digital environment. So I don't think we nailed that either, right? And then you could argue like, what's the ethics and that we should apply for even things like AI. And there's so many sort of areas that we learn about with regards to the biasness in the algorithms and so on. I think it's a certainly very interesting question. I think I think the way we tend to address any kind of fakeness or determine any fakeness, because we're talking, this is a potentially massive scale in terms of the data and so on. So I think I think the way we're gonna go forward is that some of the AI type of NML techniques gonna help us to determine, just the same way I think as it is done within the Facebook or Meta and other sort of social platforms. So I think there's going to be probably some lift and shift in terms of what we learn within those areas, and hugely automated. But I don't think there is a governing body that determines what are the ethical things or the right things that we should be doing within the virtual experiences. Hopefully that answers your
Thank
question.
you. Thank you, Wojciech.
Thank you.
Dixon, if you're still with us,
Yes. Yeah. As I need to go. Thank you.
No worries, thanks.
Bye.
thank you. Enjoy your rest of the day.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Wow. So the first and the most challenging question. I love this Q&A so far. So we have one more question from Daniel. Hopefully I pronounced your name well. Feel free to open your mic and or camera as well. So Daniel asked, are there any groups working on establishing ethics and disinformation? I think you mentioned that there aren't such groups, but are
Yeah.
there some kind of something?
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
I have not came across any of those. I think there's a fair bit of standardization in terms of the immersive technology around openness, and trying to kind of take this device agnostic sort of frameworks, and see how we can actually build experiences without that initial kind of qualification of, oh, this is the device I'm doing, or rather than the challenge I'm trying to fix, right? So there's a whole bunch of different groups that I think are looking into that, but I'm not aware of any that are looking specifically into what is ethical in terms of this type of spaces. And I think probably gaming is probably the most advanced. I'm assuming that we're gonna get some sort of spillage of what worked in that space, and then how that best practice can be applied into other immersive experiences.
Thank you, Wojciech. And Annie also shared her experiences with previous questions, that it will definitely not stop the curious and those willing to learn. Annie, would you like to share your experiences? Well, we got answers to the previous two questions, and would you like to share your experience in this field? As I see by your message that you had that you had one with your work. If not, that's okay. Okay. So we can go to the next question by Alison. Yes, so Alison, feel free to open your mic if you want to. There are definitely lots of people asking these questions about ethics, and agreed that it's extremely important ones. Hello, Alison.
Hello there. Nice to be here.
Nice to see you as well. Feel free to share your experience on the topic as well.
Well, for me, it's more the points that have been talked about ethics. I think ethics is something that we can think about beforehand. We're going to build a metaverse. Let's think about all the complications and all the ethical issues, and we can try to regulate. But actually, the ethical issues come with the usage. So as we use the metaverse, as we use AI, we can intellectualize about it and try to do all of those regulations to protect. But I think sometimes we need to allow ourselves to experience something. Obviously, we need to have people protected so people aren't at risk of harm, but we need to experience it so that we also don't restrict it. Because if we produce that regulation before it evolves and before users are in the space, actually then that stops that growth. So for me, we have to do this simultaneously. We have to use the space. We have to all take responsibility, because we don't have all of that regulation and all those ethical issues worked through. So we have to take personal responsibility in anything we're building, any contribution we're making, any time that we're in that space. But at the same time, we then need to participate in the conversation around the ethics of all the things that have been said. How do we protect people in there? How do you have anonymity in there, but also provide people protection from harm in the metaverse? Just as one example, how do we do that? And then if we put in regulations, does that move us away from the concept of decentralization? And therefore impact on the value that the decentralization is bringing to it. So not coming with answers, but with thoughts on lots of issues for us to collectively work on finding solutions over the next few years.
Agreed. Yeah, I think hence the sort of the challenge of the data and capturing the data as we interact behaviorally within the metaverse, and the things that are working or the things that making people upset, or things are that are making people happy. Having the insights and metaverse allows us to capture a greater level of insights, actually, in terms of which emotions are being triggered through the interaction and a behavioral interaction and engagement with the experiences. So I think at that level it allows us to really build a greater understanding. It's just then collectively we need to decide what is ethical and what is not, in order to to apply and so on. So it's almost like the closed loop, right? It's okay, so this is, let's try this. Does that work? Does that make people feel the certain way? Okay, how do we then bring that back and that learning? I think that having an efficient way of extracting and the data that kind of supports any of those things, it's hugely important.
And I would agree, because by having the data, we stop one experience determining what happens. We do absolutely need that wealth of data to do that. Yeah. So
but then also overlaying it with the demographic data, right? It's like, could be something a little bit more upsetting or making me happier, in a certain way because of my, background, my history, and how I was, brought up and so on. And, maybe for you, Alison, those things could be on totally opposite spectrum, right? So I think that metaverse, creates that opportunity for the uniqueness, but there's also a fine line what is, acceptable for me versus you. It'd be different. And I think with the power of it, right, we can really sort of do it dynamically, to determine, what type of content through should be surfaced or not.
And can I just add one other thing, because I think totally agree with all of what you've said, and I think that's also the reason why we need to make sure the evolving metaverse is as inclusive as possible. Because again, if we don't have that inclusivity, our data has that bias, doesn't it? And that's why we need to make sure that regulation and development of good practice is absolutely influenced by the Breakfast Society. And if you're not in the room, you can't have a voice and you can't be influencing. And that's why we need to ensure everyone is in the room. And if they're not, that's where we need to take intentional action to make sure they are. And then we need to start working out those issues as well. So yeah, really, really helpful discussion.
Great.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Wojciech, for wonderful insights. And I'd just like to add, it's very, very important to have diverse inputs and different perspectives, not just when it comes to technology or like immersive experiences or something else, but in every area of our lives, because it's what we live. So whether we have virtual identity or physical identity or multiple identities in multiple virtual or physical spaces, it comes back to the principles and what that means. Oh, hello, Shannon. Would you like to say hello? Share your experience?
I think she just waved.
Or not? Okay, all good. Oh, thank you.
Nice.
If you're listening, Shannon, to the recording, thank you as well. We way back. All good, all good. And as Annie mentioned, just to close this question, as Annie mentioned in the chat, she has over 35 years of electronic experience. So we definitely need to be patient with technology. We really need to be careful how it's been developed, and what are we doing with it? What are the short-term, what are the long-term effects? Let's see who else we have in the room and that we didn't hear from. So we could hear from Alison, we could hear from Dixon. Alberto, are you still there? If you'd like to open your mic and say a quick hello, or maybe share your experience around the topic. Guillaume, you're welcome to do so as well.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Guillaume. Did I pronounce your name well for the first time?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. What are your thoughts on this session? How do you feel?
Oh, I feel well. What about the topic for today? I have just one question.
Feel free.
In first, with Annie, I am agree we need to be patient with innovative technologies. But when I read this sentence, I think with my UX part about human-centered design, we need to observe, create a new idea, prototyping, after testing, after observation, etc. This is a cycle. And I think this step is really important to make good innovative technologies centered on users and not something quickly developed by I don't know, companies or other actors. This can create a lot of problems with users, and I think that we yet about emotional impact on effect on people. And today, this is a big challenge to protect users from effect with innovative technologies, and it's really important to take this point forward.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, Guillaume. I have for a few years in experience in customer journey mapping and UX and areas of that. So what I would say it's usually, you know, the power of iteration is beautiful, right? Because you get to do something, you get to test it, like you said. Usually, hopefully, you apply some principles of addressing the functional and emotional needs of the users. But while you do the tests, right, you're capturing data. So you're capturing behavioral data, you're capturing, you know, the data that can really inform you about, okay, what is ethical, what people respond to, what features are working and not, and then how you make that better, right? And I guess, you know, the power of that process is about, you know, how you efficiently can, you know, discover the insights, right? So how you can actually turn the interaction data or behavioral data into something that's meaningful that then can, you know, create a better product that you're creating. Because I think there is a certain, and I've seen some of it, right? So within the, as we are, you know, obviously talking about immersive technologies, I think we went through the different phases in the past, right? So when mobile apps became a thing, everything became everything needed an app, right? So I think I actually saw like Excel spreadsheet made into an app, and at that point I was like, okay, I think there's something wrong, right? So I think, you know, as we going through the different stages, I guess, of our evolution in terms of how we interact with things, right? So we need to start thinking differently, right? We evolved from point and click to a certain extent into the tap and swipe on mobile. There was a bit of a bumpy ride along the way, I think, because, like I said, everybody just was recreating mobile apps that were essentially desktop experiences. And I think the next shift that we are gonna do with regards to, you know, leveraging the immersive technology is also trying to think of, you know, there's different paradigm of interactions and different data points that we have, you know, that we capture there. So we don't want to recreate a mobile app or a desktop experience within the metaverse, right? So there's a whole bunch of analytics type of examples that I'm sometimes kind of question whether, you know, the functional or emotional needs were considered. So I think as we kind of move from that paradigm to another of the interactions, like, you know, we obviously have the different ways of interacting with the objects in the metaverse, whether it's through the AR applications or headsets. So I think that shift of thinking, I don't think it happened yet. So I think we're still exploring, but I think we're exploring and we're generating data that informs the decisions. So yes, I think I couldn't agree more with you with regards to, you know, making sure that the UX principles are applied, and maybe the UX principles for the metaverse needs to also be expanded and broadened to consider, you know, a new levels of how you interact, what is ethical, how long you can actually stay in the metaverse, right? Because that's another thing, you know. Is it the world that we're going into? Is it the world that everybody is, you know, just hooked up to the headset? Hopefully not. But yeah, there's all sorts of things that, you know, hopefully data will tell us, which is quite exciting to see how it unfolds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Wojciech, once more. And it's really different to to see what mindset do we have now and what mindset do we need for future. Because as you mentioned, we need to experiment in a different way and we need to evolve from current way of thinking to more creative and different way of thinking. Not just more or like more of this, less of that, but completely to reconstruct it and evolve from current way of thinking and dealing with stuff to some other. It's really, really important insight. So thank you both. Let's see who hasn't spoken yet. Luigi. Also, we have Luigi. Luigi, would you like to say a quick hello, share your experience, ask questions, tell us more about your day? Hello? Okay. We can't hear you if you're speaking. That's okay. We'll resolve this. So we have Umesh and Fabiano. Would you like to say a quick hello, ask a few questions, or share your experiences so far?
Hi everyone, it's Umesh here.
Hello.
Hello, Umesh. How are you?
Unfortunately, I joined quite late, so I missed the main presentation. So I'll look up the recording later on. So
Sure.
Oh, okay, all good. No worries at all. And Daniel, Fabiano, any last questions?
No, this was really great. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, and thank you for your question. It was a really important one. Wonderful. So before we close the room, I'd like to use this opportunity and ask one more question. So Wojciech, what's the coolest thing that you have done in your work so far?
Ooh, the coolest thing. Wow. Okay. I think the experience with regards to streaming a very high volume of data from the game, it is quite it would probably classify as one of the coolest. I think just purely because the volume of the data that's being generated per second is so high that yeah, we did have to be very creative of how we actually capture some of it and process it. So and then surfacing it back almost like a replay in augmented reality. I think yeah, that was I would probably say that would be one of the coolest things off the top of my head.
And thank you so much for sharing that. And last minute, we have just one more question from Umesh. So it's an interesting one. It's how do I introduce metaverse to kids? So we talked about adults and the adult world and how we should figure this stuff out, but how to introduce this to the kids? He has teenage daughter, 9-year-old son. So probably.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good one, right? So I have two younger ones.
Aw.
I think obviously ethically you have to think about, you know, how you want to manage that, and yeah, you know, the web can be dark and scary place if you end up in wrong places. So I think yeah, definitely helping you know, them realize and making sure that actually you just don't leave them there, because you know you don't know where they kind of wander. So making sure that you kind of in a close proximity when they start to explore, especially the younger ones. But there's all sorts of things. So I don't know, I showed my daughter, you know, during lockdown we were sick and tired of staying in and all that stuff, so we did explore a couple of, you know, the roller coaster type of experiences, or some of the tours around the museums, or zoos and so on. So there's, you know, a whole bunch of very interesting and educational stuff. And I remember one of the experiences was like underwater, thinking that, you know, when we actually did it, I was like thinking, well, we wouldn't never ever be able to do that, because even like getting a scuba diving type of you know, gear would be impossible. So it gives you definitely the, I would probably consider the educational side of it, really bringing into life, you know, things like events from the history, like the, you know, the stuff about dinosaurs and animals, which is a great way. But more importantly, I would say, you know, we always try to think about how you get them into coding, how you get them into creating, you know, and solving some of the problems. So, you know, for me, metaverse is not only the headset type of experiences, it's the games, it's the stuff like that, right? So find a way of teaching them code and thinking and problem solving from the young days. I think it's the skill that is gonna, you know, last a lifetime. And even, you know, within the metaverse, so I'm really into the 3D side of it, so be modeling things and so on. And even, you know, and sometimes when I have to do a DIY project at home, I would model it 3D and then just have a look at it, show it to my kids, and they would be like, oh wow, okay. So you can actually, you know, apply some of those things. So coding and modeling, it's for life, right? And so I think finding a way of actually bringing it into context of the day-to-day life, it can be quite beneficial, and getting them hooked in a right way, not only the kind of gaming all day kind of way, right?
Of course, thank you, Wojciech, for that. And thanks from Umesh. He shared his experience that he has already done some space roller coaster experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says he'll definitely search for other educational experiences as well. Even though the space sounds really, really fun. You know, exploring the stars and
Yeah, I think there's Oculus based experience, or meta based experience, where you actually are in an ISS station, and then you can, yeah, obviously there's no benefit of zero gravity, but you can kind of, you know, explore and see how how it looks like, and you know what it is inside. It feels a bit claustrophobic to me, but that's pretty cool.
but worth trying, indeed.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for a wonderful session. Thank you, Wojciech, for your time and for your insights.
No
It was a really precious experience. And thanks everyone for staying through the whole session. So we had some people going back and joining, and then going away again, joining us again. So appreciate, we are aware of the busy schedules and the summertime, summer holidays. So thank you for being there, for sharing your insights during today's session as well.
No
So
worries.
thank you.
Thanks for having me. So yeah, pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to hear and learn from you. And
Great.
if there are no more questions,
And meeting your beautiful family also. Congratulations.
Thank
the
you.
most important parts. Thank you, Karin.
Great.
I'm sure they'll learn a lot from you, and be very grateful for having the opportunity to learn directly from you. So
Thanks.
wishing all the best for you and for them in the future.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care, and thank you for joining us for this month's Lunch and Learn sessions. We explored the data and immersive experiences, but we also learned so many new things together. We are making a pause in August, but we are getting back in September with the metaverse and mental health, so keep up. And looking forward to seeing you in September as well. And one more thing, yes, we'll send you the recording, so no worries if you couldn't join the session or if you didn't have a chance to watch the whole session, we'll send you the recording as a follow-up. Thanks everyone once again. Have a great weekend and explore the virtual spaces. Take care.